And I guess we'll go ahead and get started since y'all got quiet. Clerk, call roll.
Lynn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Diane Allen, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Higgis, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constable Quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Pastor Ramon Smith from the Saginaw United Methodist Church. Thank you so much for coming out today. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges.
Let us pray. Dear loving triune God, we stand in awe of you. We bow our heads in reverent observance of your lordship. We give thanks for the relationship we have with you by grace through faith in Jesus Christ that frees us from the bondage to sin and death. We give thanks for new life through the Spirit that gives us the power to thrive in a world rife with strife. Thank you for the good news of your sacrificial love. Now let that good news move us to get into some good trouble, so that those who stumble in the dark may see your marvelous light, so that those who travail the pain of midnight will know the daybreak of hope is near. We give thanks for our county commissioners and all our local officials and staff. Endow them with godly wisdom. Help them to discern where to turn on this journey, and help them to see that the right turn is always the one that leads to you. And to your command to love you with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our strength, and with all our mind, and to love our neighbors as ourselves. The right turn is always the one that leads to care for the least, the last, and the lost. We give you thanks for our resources, for you are the source of it all. And even when we fall, you are the one who provides a hand up. God, you are our provider in the wilderness and in the pandemic. Help us to lay aside our differences and open wide our hearts to those who don't share our beliefs and values. Help us as ambassadors of hope in this county to be those who help mend everything that is broken and empowered by your Spirit. Help us to render aid and compassion to those who have lost their jobs, lost their homes, and lost loved ones in this season that we all pray within. Help us to remain faithful, because we know that joy is coming in the morning.
Yes.
In the name of Jesus Christ, let all the people of God say, Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you, Pastor.
I want to thank Pastor Ramon Smith for being with us this morning. He's a former pastor of mine at Morningside United Methodist Church. And he's been on a journey that has landed him now in Saginaw. And it's been a great journey. It's good to see you again, Ramon.
Did he just recently end up in Saginaw?
I'm sorry?
Did you just recently end up in Saginaw?
Yes, July 1st.
Well, I'm at First Methodist in Hurst, and we ended. Yvonne Kuhn came to our church just this past Sunday.
I know her well. I was ordained with her.
She is we're very excited. She is the first lady, female senior minister that we have, and I listened on Sunday, and I'm very excited to have her in our congregation.
I believe the term of art is woman.
Well, she is the first woman, female lady senior minister that we've had, and it's been long overdue. So we're excited. Thank you very much for being here today, and good luck on your new journey. Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of Court. Several announcements on the agenda, and then one announcement as it relates to the budget hearings, which we're going to be going into next Monday. That'll be August 9th. And those budget hearings will start at 11 a.m. in the courtroom. And just as a preview, it is the staff's intent to come to you with a balanced budget reflecting a half-cent reduction in the tax rate.
Yes.
So you'll see that next Monday. Members of the Court, also as it relates to the agenda itself, on item 8E1, this is the election administration. Today we're going to canvass the votes of the July 27, 2021 special runoff election for the Congressional District 6. I believe that in your packet this morning you have a substantial amount of information as it relates to those numbers, and a representative from Elections Administration is going to be here and make that presentation. Also, members of court, as we've talked about in past meetings, we're going to take various things out of order again. After we get to the point of the administrator section, we're going to go into the bond package issue. We're going to have a presentation by bond counsel in our office as it relates to the wording. I believe that we have wording obviously on Proposition A, which is the transportation piece, and the district attorney's building. We have language also that we're all in agreement on. And the important thing in that particular area is that next week we're going to bring the official order to the court calling the election, and that election will be the November election. And then also as it relates to the bond package, we're going to have a presentation by the chair of the Project Evaluation Committee, Mr. Vandergriff, and staff members from the Transportation Department. Then we're going to go into the public health presentation, which follows somewhat of a routine that we've had in the various previous court meetings. We will have some discussion on ARPA, but that will be to the latter part of the agenda itself. And, Your Honor, I believe that we have one audience participation form this morning. That's all that we've received.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of July the 27th, as well as a special call meeting of July the 27th.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Fickus. Commissioner Allen? You're muted, but we saw you move your lips. Now. Well, we're not hearing you, so you might check your volume. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We have a couple of proclamations and resolutions. Commissioner Brooks.
Yes, Your Honor, we have a memorial resolution this morning honoring the life of Devoid D. Jennings, who passed away a couple of weeks ago and was funeralized this past Saturday. The resolution has been presented to his family. I move approval this morning.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Allen? Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. And Commissioner Johnson has a resolution of recognition. Anna Hibbets. Anna, would you come down, please? And I'll read this into the record, then come down and make a presentation. This is the J.D. Johnson Annual Youth Leadership and Service Award recipient. Whereas in April 2019, the Tarrant County Commissioners Court approved the J.D. Johnson Annual Youth Leadership and Service Award, recognizing individuals who made choices preparing them for leadership and service. And whereas J.D. Johnson began his career in public service as a Saginaw City Council member, then Mayor of Saginaw, and then became Tarrant County Commissioner for Precinct 4 in 1987, giving him the distinction of the longest-serving commissioner in Tarrant County history. And whereas Commissioner Johnson is a highly respected leader, including a gubernatorial appointment to the Texas Commission on Jail Standards, being elected president of both the Texas Association of Counties and the County Judges and Commissioners Association of Texas. And whereas Commissioner Johnson supports 4-H, FFA programs, the Fort Worth Stock Show Calf Scramble, North Texas High School Rodeo Association, and since 1984 has led a buyer's pool to raise over $2 million for Tarrant County Junior Livestock Show. And whereas Anna Hibbets was named the 2021 recipient of the J.D. Johnson Award for Community Service and Leadership, and is an active Keller 4-H Club member and Keller CTE FFA member, serving as a leader and mentor, including 4-H Club president and FFA reporter. And whereas Anna's service time includes partnering with the City of Keller for their Keep Keller Beautiful program, collecting donation items for the Humane Society of North Texas, and volunteering with Project Hope for the homeless and at the Presbyterian Women's Shelter. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, are pleased to recognize Anna Hibbets for the J.D. Johnson Award for Community Service and Leadership, in witness whereof we have herein to set our hands and cause the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 3rd day of August 2021.
I move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen? Motion passes unanimously. Somewhere out here, I'll bet the parents. Did y'all get the picture? You just
Put the camera on.
make any comments you'd like to make.
Thank you to the judge and the Commissioners Court for the award recognition and for your continued support of the 4-H and FFA youth of Tarrant County. It's an honor to be recognized by something tied to Commissioner Johnson's name, as he is the longest-serving member in the history of Tarrant County Commissioners Court and has always supported youth in 4-H and FFA. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would just add that there is no stronger advocate for the youth, for the FFA 4-H program, for the livestock show, for all youth-related type activities than Commissioner Johnson. And as is obvious by the fact that he's the largest, or that he's the longest serving, he's old.
Bound to get a little older.
But we still love him. So, JD, thanks for your support. And thank you for everything you've done for the county and for all these numbers of years. Moving right along. Next, before we get into employee recognition, I want to just mention a couple of things. Last Friday night, I had an opportunity to be present at a appreciation event for the folks who went together and basically served the Northeast Vaccination Center there at the Hearst Convention Center. They had 35 different organizations, all of the fire departments in that Northeast area, which I believe were 14 or 15, they had volunteer organizations, they had just a whole bunch of folks who did this, and basically they set it up. I remember calling the mayor of Hurston saying, okay, look, we need a vaccination center out in the Northeast. Y'all got a great location. He said, we'll do it. I'll get a hold of the city manager, who happened to be out of town on vacation. I think his vacation, I don't think it got cut short, but I think he spent a lot of time working on his vacation. But they got started in that. They gave over 188,000 vaccinations. Yes. When you look at something, I think they had close to 140 folks out there just every day that they were open. Now that's a lot of folks to organize and to work through and to schedule. So these major sites that we had are extremely important, and the people who worked there really worked as a team. And this is an example of where that team was made up of folks from really all over Northeast Tarrant County. And they, Hearst Convention Center served meals. I think they said they served close to 28,000 meals. It was really a collective effort. And again, it just points to how people have come together throughout the county in this pandemic. And we had an opportunity to thank those folks, and it was a great event, and I just wanted to highlight that. They actually created a little coin to signify that everyone who worked and volunteered got one of those coins. So those folks are all over the county. This happened to be one of the locations, and I'm very proud of that, just because I live about probably less than a half a mile from where that that vaccination center was. So I wanted to bring that up. And then also, we lost another very strong community member last week, and his name was Otis Thornton.
Yes.
Otis, for the longest time, worked in Tarrant County as far as the homeless, doing everything he could to help the homeless population. He passed away, and I would like for us to close court in his memory today.
Thank you for bringing up Otis.
Yeah, he did a great job.
Yes, and before you go on to employee recognitions, I want to congratulate one of our own, Commissioner Devin Allen. This past week was recognized by the Fort Worth Business Press as being among those outstanding young leaders in Tarrant County. She was in that group of 40, under 40, being recognized by the Fort Worth Business Press. Congratulations, Commissioner Allen.
The other thing that I need to remind folks of, remember we had our little lunch bag last week, and we had our auction that concluded on Friday. The food drive ends this Friday, August the 6th. You can still donate to the virtual food drive, either through the email link that was sent out by Susan. As of yesterday afternoon, we had raised a little over $5,000. And so, again, anything you can do to help in that regard would certainly be appreciated. Now we're going to move to employee recognition. And, I walked in here this morning, and I can't tell you, I know that we've got that Delta variant out there, and I know that we need to be careful. But I can't tell you how glad I am to look out here and just how happy it makes me to see a full courtroom and to be able to recognize the employees that make Tarrant County such a great place to live, to work, to raise a family. And I will again reiterate that I think that a lot of the reason it is a great place is because of the people sitting in this room and the people who have come before you and will come after you. So let me begin by thanking everyone for your service and for the way you approach your public service and the folks that you deal with every day and the treatment and the professional ways that you deal with them. The routine is I try to pronounce your name. And I say that today because I have looked down it and it is just not going to be a good day for me.
No, it's not.
So please, if it appears as though you should be the next person, alphabetically, please stand up. And I usually sometimes ask, well, how would you pronounce it? But I think if I did that today, we might be here past lunch. But I will, we'll see how we get through it. You stand up for you new ones, you rookies. You stand up and you wait until we've gotten all of that particular class read out. We'll congratulate you, and then you can sit down at that point in time, and then we'll move through that. So again, I will begin with an apology on how I mispronounce all of your names. And that today it could be all of them. Starting with our 5-year employees, first is Christian Acosta Andrade. It really saddens me when I really mess one up and they're not here to tell me. Javier Alexander from the Sheriff's Office. Jackie Ariano from Justice of the Peace Precinct 1. Cassandra Avalos, Tax Office. Rosalinda Bedford, Tax Office. Matthew Biles, Precinct 3. Ashley Castillo, Sheriff's Office. Brian Davis, Precinct 1. Truhan Dong, Public Health. No, don't. You're about to sit back down. Don't do that. Anthony Ferrara, District Clerk. Alexandria Flores, Criminal Courts Magistrate. Cynthia Gerard, County Clerk. Thank you so much for being here today. Richard Hatcher, Precinct 1. Janelle Holt, Community Development. Maggie Jones, Community Development. There's Maggie. She was here late last night. Kerbin Kujak, Sheriff's Office. Demetris Lopez Loftus, Criminal District Attorney's Office. David McCurdy, County Administrator's Office. There he is. I thought you were around here. Ann Pena, Sheriff's Office. Kyle Russo, Criminal District Attorney's Office. Pamela Solomon, Public Health. Stephen Spurlock, Sheriff's Office. Jennifer Umanzor, Public Health. Christian Virgil. There ain't no Virgil in there, there's no R in there. Sheriff's Office. And Ashley Williams, County Clerk. These are our 5-year people. Thank you very much. Now for our 10-year employees. Brittany Bobbitt, Criminal District Court number 3. Rachel Cardell, Criminal District Court number 2. Dee Stormare. Yeah, you think that's easy. Did I get anywhere near it? Did I get anywhere near it?
No.
Well, you know, I have it written down here, and I even have and Rachel's back there saying, we practiced on this one with the county auditor's office. Thank you for being here. Jason Franklin, Facilities Management. Ivan Galvin, Sheriff's Office. Beverly Honcup, District Clerk's Office. Carrie King, the 396th District Court. Mark Lewis, Public Health. Felisa Manning, Juvenile Services. I can tell by the laugh that I messed that one up. You want to go ahead and try?
It's Felisa Manning.
Well, what were y'all laughing about back there? I'll get y'all in a minute. Rodrigo Robles, Sheriff's Office. Ronald Solis, Human Services. Maria Cerna, Elections Administration. Derek Smith, Sheriff's Office. Smith. Lloyd Taylor, Facilities Management. Julia Testa, County Auditor. Rhonda Young, 236th District Court. These are our 10-year employees. Let's get on. Now for our 15-year employees. Kimberly Bramlett, County Auditor. Nelda Kakati, Criminal Courts. It's one of those, if it sounds like it, stand up. Cheryl Carver, Sheriff's Office.
It's an easy one.
Jackie Combs, Sheriff's Office. Judith Estrada, County Clerk. Mark Evans, Sheriff's Office. Jamie Frazier, Sheriff's Office. Martha Guerrero, Public Health. Susan LeBird, Sheriff's Office. Frank Lopez, Facility Management. Paul Perez, Sheriff's Office. The Honorable Beth Polis, 324th District Court. Kyle Russell, Precinct 4. Kyle Sexton, Sheriff's Office. Marcus Womack, Sheriff's Office. These are our 15-year employees. Now for our 20-year employees. Aaron Barnes, Information Technology. Rachel Caldron, Criminal Courts. Justin Davis, District Clerk. Justin. John Ellers, Information Technology. Teresa Leon, Public Health. Teresa Parsons, Precinct 3.
Yay.
And Sherrod Poe, Juvenile Services. These are our 20-year. Let's get it on. Now for our 25 plus, I give them a call and we talk, and it's just good to hear their thoughts, their remembrances over the time that they've been with the county. Our first is Julie Creamer, the Criminal District Attorney's Office. Started in the DA's office at JPS and still there. She said, I have seen changes in attorneys, but each one of them have been great in different ways. She says, I have really enjoyed the opportunity to have worked with them. She says, what I like most is that the court thinks about all the folks, both employees as well as the citizens, that they know that the employees are going to be dealing with. The county is always looking out for not only the citizens, but also we've seen examples. We're looking at mental health stuff right now. Elder fraud, I know the DA's office has looked at that and really helping the underserved from that standpoint. And she says, and the benefits ain't bad either. When I asked her if there was anything else, she said, she had been in the real estate business. And when that took a turn at one point in time, so she's been here for 25 years, so it's taken a couple of turns at times. She said, I came to the county, and she said, I have really loved being at JPS. And she said, you can just tell when you enjoy going to work every day, it just shows that you're very fortunate to get paid for doing something that you really love. She feels like she's made a difference with the people she's had an opportunity to serve, and she said, I am very proud to work for Sharon, for the county, and for JPS. Julie, we appreciate very much the 25 years of service you've given us.
Judge, Julie brought a crowd with her this morning. I rode up on the elevator with her sister.
Oh, now wait a minute. Just introduce them. You remember her name?
Courtney Taylor. Not her boss. First, my boss is Sharon. Christy Dooley, co-worker. She does mental health work. My sister Leah, my daughter, my youngest, Shelby, and my husband of about 35, 36 years, Jerry. And he's self-employed. I told him, you don't have to come. You can just wait till I retire in several years from now. But he said, no, I'm going. So he took off work today to come.
Well, Jerry, you can kid her a little bit later on for not knowing whether it was 35 or 36. But I am just going to tell you that if you had forgotten and didn't know exactly how many, you would be in trouble. Thank you very much, Julie. We appreciate you. Next is, I don't believe she's here. She was on vacation. Rosalind Liggins with the Sheriff's Office, 25 years. So when Rosalind gets back off vacation, be sure and thank her for her service. Next is Maria Rivas, the Sheriff's Office. Started out as a Tech 1 in Belknap as a clerk, and then got her peace officer's license and went to work at Green Bay in 1999. She went to the back door of the Correction Center and Booking Patrol and mental warrants now. When I asked her what she liked most, she said, over the years, my supervisors have always been encouraging to me. And that's something that I really appreciate. The opportunities that I have, she said, especially under the new sheriff, she just feels like that there's endless number of opportunities. She said, I love the people and I love the benefits that Tarrant County offers. Maria, we very much appreciate the 25 years of service you've given Tarrant County. Next is someone who is also on vacation, Lance Rodman with the Sheriff's Office. He is celebrating 25 years, so when he gets back off vacation, please congratulate him and thank him for his years of service. Next is Diana Sunleitner with Public Health. Diana and I go to church together, or been to church together. Started out in public health as a microbiologist, and I asked her, she's still doing that, and I asked her what that meant. And she says, in my particular area, we do a lot of testing. She does a lot of the testing for the STD and has done that for a number of years. When I asked her about the memorable moment, she said, well, it's nothing that I can say out loud. And there's a lot of laughter, but there's a lot of people in this room that's laughing, that thinking, yeah, if he asked me that question, I'd be the same answer I'd give too. They used to give me those answers, and after I told a couple of those stories, they quit telling them to me. She said, what I like most is just the general attitude that the folks and public health have. They've got, especially in the last 18 months, there's a lot of stuff that comes through, and the attitude that people have and display can mean so much to the work environment, and I think that's so important. She said the lab, she said when I first started, it really was a big family. She said we're seeing so many new people coming and going that's changing a little bit, but that she still feels like that's what she remembers and what she liked most. She said, I have really enjoyed working for the county. And Diana, we really appreciate the work that you've given us. Thank you very, very much for your 25 years. Next is John Kiefer for Constable Precinct 7, 30 years. Now, he started with the sheriff's office in the old jail, and then he went to the corrections center in the pods. He's been through booking, courts, patrol. He was, in 1999, he went to narcotics as a canine handler. Back to patrol, was promoted to sergeant in 2008, and then in 2013 transferred to the constable's office. He said memorable moments there was a time when the county was out and they actually seized 300 pounds of marijuana. He said what he likes most is having a chance to help people. He said the job is always changing. He said, in the different places he's worked, he's had an opportunity to wear many different hats. When I talked with him 6 years ago, or it had been 5 years ago. He had 2 kids. One was 23 and one was 17. Now the kids obviously are 28 and 22. His oldest son now works for the sheriff's office. So, John, we appreciate very much the 30 years of service you've given to Tarrant County. Thank you. Did you have anybody to keep up?
His Constable Sandra Lee.
Yeah, right here.
Constable, welcome. Glad to have you here today. Next is Sheila Washington, Criminal District Attorney's Office, 30 years. She started in juvenile probation and was there for about a year and a half, transferred to the DA's division in the juvenile area, and is still there and now is a legal assistant. She said, what I like most is the job, the people. I could hear her, it's one of these things where you hear kind of a thought over the phone, but I couldn't get her to fess up to it. She said the time has gone by very fast. When I talked with her 5 years ago, she said she wasn't looking at time. Things just flew by. Her daughter had graduated from high school, was starting at UNT at that particular time in the fall. She'd been married 22 years. When I talked to her this time, 5 years later, daughter graduated from UNT with a business degree in entrepreneurship. Now having to take care of her mom a little bit. Some issues are kind of developing there. She said, I'm fixing to celebrate 27 years of marriage. She said, in dealing with the COVID, she tries to find time during each day to, 1, be thankful, and 2, to laugh. Because she said those things just help me make it through and just keep on going. She says, I love working for the county and the people that I've had a chance to work with. Sheila, did you have anyone that came with you today that you'd like to introduce? Just you. Well, let me tell you, you is great because we appreciate so much the 30 years of service you've given us. Thank you. Folks, that's 835 years of service to this county. And we, again, can't tell you what a difference you make in the way this county operates on a day-to-day basis. So thank you. Continue to keep up the good work. And there are refreshments back in 504C. So thank you again. I'll move that we receive and file the employee recognition.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Sound Sharon. Mr. Menendez, I think we'll, if you don't mind, we'll go ahead and do the audience participation at this time. Thomas Tornikowski, please come forward. You know the routine, 3 minutes. Since this item's not on the agenda, then we can't respond, but we appreciate you coming forward and making any comments you'd like to make.
Judge Whitley, commissioners, I sat amongst 835 years of service, more than $100 million in taxpayer labor burden, and I waited my turn to speak to you today. I often feel like that little boy standing on the edge of the parade screaming that the king has no clothes. Most taxpayers and most stakeholders in this county can't come here on Tuesday mornings. Today I wanted to encourage you specifically to devise a way, since 3 of you purport to be conservatives, to tie a consequence and an incentive to the performance of the district attorney's office and the sheriff's office, specifically the 2 elected officials, the district attorney and the sheriff. Before we get deeply into a $116 million building, which personally I think would be better spent on a public defender's department, we need to look at the 17-month backlog of unadjudicated defendants in the county jail. We didn't have any problem prosecuting Crystal Mason and sending her to prison for 5 years for doing what a public official, a Tarrant County official, suggested she do. An ethics inquiry went unanswered by the district attorney's office, but there are lots of examples. As far as the county sheriff goes, you may not realize this, but the most watched social media, which outranks all of the major networks combined, with over 200 million views a week, mocks our sheriff. You don't watch it. You probably don't watch it. But the truth is that the combined failure of inspection by our jail, the assault and oppression by our jailers, the number of inmates that shouldn't be in the jail, most of them wouldn't even serve 17 months for some of the offenses. I think we need to identify specific consequences or pet projects by both of these individuals and find a measurable way to tie performance. Pass a jail inspection for a year before you run around on a horse in the mounted patrol. Or travel costs. Maybe cut his travel budget so he's not going to political events and embarrassing a whole swath of our county. The same thing's true with the district attorney's office. They have a public integrity unit. When pointed out that there are specific state statutes about public integrity and civil rights violations, they said it wasn't their responsibility. There are a number of perfect examples, but I believe that we have the rare opportunity with two of you retiring to start applying strong fiscal, conservative responsibility and tie performance to budget. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Court members, you have before you the consent agenda.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay. Members of the court, we can now go to the briefing agenda, and we're going to take up item B first, which is 11B. This is the general obligation bond program. And let me see if we have, okay. Last week you might remember that we tentatively approved the language for Proposition A, and this morning we're bringing you the proposed language for Proposition B. And this concerns the Criminal District Attorney's Office and other non-judicial county activities that will be located, with the potential being located in that particular building. We have worked with the District Attorney's Office on language. I believe that we're all in consensus with that. And at this time, we would seek your approval to include the language as presented in the bond order that we will bring to the court next week.
Move approval.
I will second with a question. Do we have the language someplace where we can display?
Oh, I'm sorry. It should be in your red folders also.
Is this language agreed upon by all and sundry?
Yes, it is.
It is. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion?
Do you have a second?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Brooks seconded it. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And court members, as I said, this will be up for a final vote, and the order calling the election for this coming November, and it'll be on the next week's agenda. If we can continue with that, we do have a presentation that will be made by the Project Evaluation Committee. I believe, Mr. Vandergriff, are you going to start this? Okay. And we'll need to change the slides also. Okay, very good. Mr. Vandergriff.
Good morning. I appreciate being with you again this morning. Thank you in advance for once again appointing me to head up this committee. It was a privilege and pleasure, and looks like we've got some good things to report to you. I want to make sure that you do have before you some hard copies of some documents you have. They're oversized. We won't put these up on the overhead here in a second, but one are maps of all the precincts, and it identifies where the projects are in the precincts, looks at the county first and the individual precincts. You also have a list of all of the projects that were submitted, the call for projects that were submitted by the lead agencies, and it gives their ranking and then their project number as they came in from the different cities. And so hopefully you have those. You should also
have hard copies of what you are going to see in the presentation today, which would include the recommended projects and the ones just outside the proposed fundings, so we can certainly discuss that, and then the projects that are recommended for funding by individual precincts. So again, hopefully you have that and have the opportunity to look through those. I have with me obviously today Mike Lego and Randy Skinner from the county, and Chris Bosco from Friesen Nichols, and they were certainly with me every step of the way during this process, and so they'll be able to step up if we have any specific questions of them. Just to show you again what the timeline was, I won't go through this line by line, but I came in April, and then the meeting of the PEC started to meet back in May. We've had 3 official meetings, several discussions, both individually and collectively going forward in this. So we've spent a lot of time on this as a group. And I want to make sure you notice the people that you put on this committee, and that I also recognize them to all of you. Each and every one of them, I would say, I use this title on one, but they're probably appropriate to all 15 of them. They were stone cold killers for the precincts that they represented, and made sure and set aside any individual preferences or priorities to look to also the common good for the county as well. I saw no flaw or no favoritism on their part, other than making sure they represented your individual precinct interest, but really to look to the county good as well, and their scores and their comments reflected that. So it's a credit to you that they all did as you requested them to do. The PEC process, what I wanted to make sure and give you a list of what the process that we went through, and we talked about these things, I think, along the way as I was here with you. Obviously, the projects were submitted, and the evaluations were prepared of each individual project. We had fact sheets and maps associated with that. Chris Bosco taking the lead with Friesen Nichols in support. The company as a whole really did a great job of going out. They also went and interviewed every single city and went through every single project to understand those projects. That took a lot of time. Frankly, that was probably the greatest time eater in a positive way through this whole process, and why it took roughly 4 months to come through that, because that was a directive that you had, the administrator's office supported, and certainly our committee appreciated and supported that as well. It made our job really fairly simple in one sense, which was you had a sheet on every single project with a map, and you knew where they were, and you also understood what the priority by city was on each project, which was important. We also spent time evaluating the criteria that we would weight these projects on. I will note one of those criteria is important, that it was strategically significant, which included things about its location, but also included what that meant in terms of economic development into an individual community. Another was shovel ready, which this court had insisted that we have projects that would be ready to go to funding. It became apparent 2 things during the process. Pretty much any project that we selected would be ready within a 5-year period of time if it wasn't already ready. Many of the cities were doing that and being prepared going forward before the bond election was announced. But in addition to that, given the, I won't call it constraints, but just the circumstances you have of another called election for the criminal courts facility, or the criminal facility, justice facility, excuse me, that those 2 calls together do make it somewhat circumspect in terms of how much money you can get out of the next 5 years, which, as I heard from your bond packages, maybe $7 to $77 million. I'm sure that will change as you get closer to that. But the reality is the shovel-ready tag really pretty much could apply, if that's what you can get out in the first 5 years, to pretty much any city that would be participating in this. And so we've had preliminary discussions. It will be your decision along with the county administrator in support, but that really those projects, the cities probably can get these projects out during the next 5 to perhaps even 7 years, and in turn can have interlocutory agreements with you to reimburse them when you're able, as the money comes through the county bond package, which in effect The good news is your $200 million might be in effect faster as you would anticipate. Then you'll be able to pay it, but yet with the agreement, the cities could go forward. So that's, I think, a good policy decision on the count of the administrator and you individually and collectively. We spent a lot of time, obviously, ranking each individual project, and then we reviewed those project scores to come up with what you'll see as and what you're reviewing as the ranking of the projects. The PEC members, after our consultant gave an initial ranking to the projects, they came forward and got the maps that you see, the project list that you see, the scoring of them, and were able electronically to go through and rank the projects individually. And they did that and got the opportunity to weigh in. Myself, I made at least once a month and usually twice a month, I would touch base with each individual member and talk to them about the progress we were making and get their input and the like. So spent probably with each one of them maybe 2 to 3 hours total on the phone or in a Zoom call. And again, as I called them, stone cold killers. But one of the things in using that in a positive way was that it became real apparent, particularly as we got into the scoring process, that people were taking it very seriously, and in some cases they were actually driving and reviewing projects in areas that they were not familiar with. And again, that's to their credit to do that. After getting that, we then got the list back and reviewed that list that Freese and Nichols took into consideration each individual committee member's scoring plus mine, so 16 total. And then that did have some impact on the rankings, and then of course the committee got a chance to review those rankings going forward as we did. And with that, we then last week had our final meeting and prepared this list that you see, which I better flip the slide, but you have this package with you. Obviously, you can't see it over on this chart very well that's electronic, but you can see, you have it in the handout. And I'm not sure if Commissioner Johnson and Commissioners Allen do have this themselves, but if they don't, they'll be getting it soon. And this is a list of the projects that we scored and ranked. A couple of things. One was at your direction that you had asked that every city, we call them a lead agency, I guess that's technically what they were, but every city would get a project. And the committee believed that that should be the number one ranked project of each individual city. From a monetary perspective or a placement of projects perspective, it really was not significant. For example, with every city getting their individually highest ranked project, all of those were projects that were well thought of by our committee, some of which might not have been funded, but with that directive they were. And if you looked at what we would have alternatively done, particularly those whose projects would have been out of the money, so to speak, it was really a $600,000 difference. So by giving every city, or recommending to you every city that get its number one project, it ended up having, there's no change based on every city getting a project. I hope I'm making sense. It would be no change to the funding scheme. No project was left out as a result of that. So with the initial directive and then our suggestion that it be the number one ranked project, no project, the next project on this list, which is number 34, would not have been funded. As you can see, that project is identified as a Collins Street project in Arlington, Texas, and it's a $5 million project. So, and then these projects ranked 34 through 40 were the next highest ranked projects. There's 7 of them, of course, on this list that would have been funded, obviously, if we'd been able at $220 million. So those are decisions I know that obviously when you go towards the multi-jurisdictional projects and take a look at those, for example, and what your determination is there, some of the projects off of this list that are now being funded or recommended to be funded, they might shift to multi-jurisdictional, again, depending on what this court decides that means, and you, of course, may take a completely different direction. But we wanted to make sure that you knew our next highest ranked projects, so that if you drop down to 220 or if you moved up and used your multi-jurisdictional to cover some of projects like these, then you knew what would come next, at least from our recommendations going forward. And then you have here by precinct the totals. You have that sheet also in your package, easier to read certainly than this projected vision of it. those totals were very close, and it was not planned this way, but they were very close in percentages to what the total number of projects that were presented by precinct into the package that we got before us, that 196 projects total. Also, if you were to look at the last parts of the projects, I should make note that we had talked to you, or I had talked to you once before in one of the meetings about the drainage projects and a couple of trail projects which could be eligible, again, if you make them eligible in either commissioner discretion or multi-jurisdictional, but we did not value those as highly, and they were not part of the call, so those projects ended up being ranked but scored the least in the group, and that's about 32, 34 projects total at the bottom rank of that 196 that I mentioned. The last but certainly not least thing that I want to point out to you is the people in your county, the leaders in your county, if you will, that worked with me. I will admit that when I would get into a room, and we usually tried to meet about once a week or once every 10 days as we were evaluating projects, so when there's enough people there, I realized that they're looking at me a little bit, and what are you thinking, what are you going to do? But the reality is they were looking to help me and to make sure that they facilitated your wishes, and they made sure and conveyed them. Sometimes I had maybe a different thought, but they were very clear about where the Commissioner's Court was or was not, and that was most helpful to me in helping facilitate what you wanted to do and making sure our committee stayed on task. Obviously, the county administrator, G.K. Manius, I've known him for the entire time he's been the county administrator, and it's always a privilege and a pleasure to work with him. His leadership is tremendous, and there's a reason why things are pretty calm and collected and together in Tarrant County. And for over these years, obviously it starts with the elected leadership, but having a secure county administrator is terrific. So thank you for that opportunity to work with you. And I did not have the chance previously to work with Randy and Mike. Randy in particular, unflappable, just really has a very calm demeanor in working with us and taking care of the personalities, which are unique in the 16 of us on this committee, but they did their job very well. The judge grinned when I said unique of the personalities. So it takes one to know one, Judge. Put it that way.
That's true.
Yeah. And then last but not least is the rest of the county staff that's there. I've gone past that, but each one of them that I identified here, they were involved in these meetings at various stages and were very effective and helpful on your behalf and on the citizens of Tarrant County's behalf as well. So again, it was a privilege and a pleasure to do this work for you and with you. I'm available, and as are Randy and Mike. And I forgot to mention the most important person outside of the county staff, and that is Chris Bosco for Freese and Nichols. Obviously, Alan Greer and Stanford Lynch, they have been fast friends and colleagues of mine in various projects for a long time. This is the first time I had a chance to work with Chris, who must have been a teenager, I was telling him, when he was on the bond package in 2006. But he really was unflappable, positive, Johnny on the spot to get things out, and he was the glue that held this thing together from a standpoint of putting everything that you see on a chart and lickety-split and changing it when we needed to. So congratulations and thank yous to all of them is certainly in order. But any questions?
Thank all of you very much.
Okay.
Victor, we really appreciate your work on that, and I know that with your expertise and your knowledge of not only Tarrant County, but really all over the state, will help and has helped already. So we appreciate you not only agreeing to take this role, I won't necessarily use the word volunteering, but agreeing to take this role on and doing it with the same excellent work that you've done and everything in the past. So we really appreciate that.
Well, my transportation experience started with this Commissioner's Court almost 16 years ago when you became the county judge, and it's always a privilege to be here. And I want to make sure for the record and say that when the judge and you discussed this and appointed me, the first time it was discussed, I did call him and ask him, and he said, I'm just planting a seed. And so when I got appointed unanimously by this court, that was the only message I ever got, was just planting the seed. And so when I got back to him, he said, I told you I was planting the seed. So that was it. Yeah, it grew. Thank you very much.
Now, before you leave, is there any questions? Does anybody have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you, Victor, the patience you showed in putting together and directing and conduct like a conductor of a fine orchestra. You had 15 very diverse individuals to work with, and everybody had their own thoughts and opinions, and so I really want to thank you for all that hard work that you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
And Randy and Mike and the whole staff, and Friesen Nichols, I thought did a very good job, and the way they handled it and put it together. So anyway, thank you.
You bet.
Devin, did you have a question?
No, basically what Commissioner Fick has just said, so ditto.
I also want to thank Victor and the members of the Project Evaluation Committee for their tender mercies toward this bond program. The result speaks for itself. It's a very balanced portfolio of projects, and I'm very pleased to see the selections that y'all came up with. And thanks to the consultants as well, and to those on the staff who helped facilitate this process. It's a valuable service to the people of Tarrant County, and I hope that it will lead towards a successful outcome in November.
Thank you. And we'll certainly be there to help you pass this as you need us. So thank you very much. All right.
Thank you.
Your Honor, we could receive and file the report.
Move to receive and file.
Second.
We have a motion to second to receive and file the report. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, we can now
I do have, before we move on, this is for GK. I know obviously next week we have on the agenda that we'll approve the language for the ballot. But then what's the next step after that, leading up to November?
So once we approve the language for the ballot, then we'll work with elections and begin the process of creating the ballot itself. There is going to be, the staff is going to put together some informational material that will not be either for or against the bond program, but to educate the general public as to what is going to be in that bond program. And obviously we'll bring that back to you all very quickly. We've already started working on some of those items, and then there'll be an effort which staff cannot participate in on county time on the marketing aspect of the bond program also.
Okay, thank you.
So members of the court, if we can now go to the administrator's report. We're going to go to item number 1. And as we did last week, we are not going to make a presentation as it relates to the material that you see in your red folder. We also sent this out, I believe, yesterday to you all. We're here to answer any questions that you may have. As part of item number 1, and as we've done historically, we're going to ask Mr. Tenasia to come forward and make his presentation at this time.
Good morning, Your Honor, and members of the court.
Good morning. Good morning, Denny.
Back again with our update on COVID-19 and other health issues. But the story, yes, I know the colors have turned all kinds of red. Tarrant County, obviously our cases are up. We're at about 275,000 cases. I believe this morning we reported another 500. Yesterday was 700 something. So we're up there in numbers, and deaths are ticking up, but slowly. Some days there are 8 or 10. Some days there's 1. So today was a good day. We only reported 1.
Hospitalizations certainly trending up. Tarrant County is at 14.22% of hospital capacity occupied by COVID. That's 636 people in the hospital. And in the Trauma Service Area E, which is the 19-county region, as you can see, a lot of counties have exceeded their capacity numbers, but overall the Trauma Service Area E is at 10.91%, 1,694 people in the hospital. This kind of tells part of the story. The other part of the story is that they're really, really full because they're in full swing of their business. So generally, the rule of thumb is most of them are operating at 90% full. So, that adds to the pressure to how to manage all of this. Trends in Tarrant County. Again, we're at a high level of community spread. As you can see on the epidemic curve on the left, that's the curve that we talked about. Let's flatten that curve, lower that curve. When the vaccines came out, it sharply declined. We held it flat for quite a while. It's starting to turn back up again as these daily and weekly numbers add up. The R0, which I was kind of trying to be hopeful about last week, has actually ticked back up again. It's 1.26. Simple terms, the virus spread is getting accelerated. One person that's infected is at least infecting 1.26, people. So it's spreading. Here's all the other indicators. They're going up sharply, unfortunately. We're at almost 21%, 20.88% of positivity rate. So what that tells you is that out of all the 100, if we test 100 people, 21 people are coming back positive. That's a very high positivity rate. We talked about having a mobile testing plan. That's been started. I think yesterday we were at Precinct 3. I believe today we're at Precinct 1, a couple of the locations, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and it's a rotation at every precinct site. More to come as the numbers show. If there's demand, we'll look at other options, but if there's not demand, then this will be the plan. It will be a rotation at precinct sites. And then all the other indicators are pointing up. Unfortunately, the COVID-like illness has gone up to 6%. And if you notice the blue line, that is what we capture everything, influenza-like illness. It's been staying up. That's the RSV numbers, and I'll show you a chart of RSV. There's not really a whole lot of influenza, even though it's available throughout the year. It happens. Most of that blue line is driven by our RSV. So we've got a doubleheader happening in our community, unfortunately, with COVID and RSV. And then all the hospital charts are there, and the case rate has jumped to 166 per 100,000. And as you can remember, the positivity rate being above 10% on its own puts you in the red category, and the case rate being above 100 on its own can put you in the red category. These both are above their threshold. So we're in a pretty high level of spread in our community. And a simple solution, let's get vaccinated. I mean, we all know this. So RSV situation.
Would you repeat that one more time?
Yes, sir. The solution is simple, folks. Let's get vaccinated because that's a sure shot way, pun intended. It's a sure shot way to get out of this pandemic. So RSV, I was kind of hopeful that this drop in positivity last week was going to be a good news, but it was short-lived. We're going back up, unfortunately. As you can see, we're approaching 50% positivity. And if you talk to pediatricians and other, child-related hospitals like Cook Children's or Children's Hospital in Dallas, they're all seeing a big burden of illness with RSV. Almost 10 to 12% of the visits in ERs, age groups younger, 0 to 4 mostly, but even some older age groups are, related to RSV. So complicated, but again, simple masking helps with that as well. And we know it worked because last year, seasonally, it was next to nothing. Normally, every winter, we have a lot of RSV, but the only thing different was people were wearing a mask. So what should we do? There's not a vaccine for RSV right now, but masks are there, so that work. And then for COVID, obviously, we know get vaccinated. If you're going to be out and about, we're in mixed company, wear a mask, avoid large crowds. I mean, these things have been shown to work. They work, so let's try it.
And by mixed company, you mean
vaccinated and unvaccinated.
And
yes.
Unvaccinated.
Yes, sir. That is correct. Quick update on vaccines. So I mentioned last week our data has improved quite a bit. We got most of the data back from DSHS. I think the last I heard there was about a 50,000 dose gap, which is about 0.5% when you look at the county's numbers. And that was related to some geocoding issues they've had with a third-party vendor. So we're working with them to resolve that. But overall, as you can see, the numbers have improved. We're at 55% of the county, that is eligible population having at least one dose. And then overall, all the cities and the colors are getting deeper and deeper so that we know there's more vaccine coverage. But we're also, now that there's more accurate data, we're also updating the dashboard this Wednesday. And here's a preview. What we're going to do is sort of change the layout a little bit to make it easier to read, because all the boxes on the left were getting a little cluttered. And then on top, there's going to be 2 buttons. People can select one dose or fully vaccinated as an option, and the numbers will change, and the areas with zip codes and the cities and their coverage colors will change. That way you can see, have a choice on how you want to look at the data. And here's another update. Similarly, you'll have the choice of one dose and fully vaccinated. But here's a different way of looking at all the distribution related to demographics. So far, when the data was not fully there, all we were able to do was show you, okay, 100 doses of vaccine, how did they get distributed? This many went to African Americans, this many went to Hispanics, this many went to what age group. Now that more data is there, we can look at what is the actual percentage completion of vaccination. So the vaccination rate in a community. The denominator is that community itself. So what I've shown here is fully vaccinated. In African Americans, it's 27.8 or 27.6%. And the denominator is all the African American population in Tarrant County. So it clearly tells us there's some work to do in that community. Similarly, you can look at age groups. Older age groups, they listened to the message very well. They could see that there's a need. They participated really heavily. 65 to 74, 75% vaccinated. 75 plus, almost 73% vaccinated. Younger age groups, that invincible syndrome is there. And as you can see, the numbers are pretty low. So more work needs to be done with the younger population. The messaging changes depending on who you're talking to. So all of that can be derived from this chart. So this will be updated on Wednesday.
Are you hearing anything out of the CDC about lowering the vaccination age to, say, 5 as we enter this going back to school?
Yes, so there's been a lot of discussion. The timeline is a little unclear. I know that Pfizer is pretty close to submitting or may have already shared their data. They had to expand their study. I think the original timeline was before the school year starts, but when this report came out about vaccine-related myocarditis and all of these companies took an expanded look at their, wanted to increase their recruitment in those younger age groups to make sure they capture everything. So that was a reason for the delay. I think Pfizer's probably going to be the front runner. I've heard mixed, early as September, late as December. So we'll see. Eventually when they submit to FDA, we'll all know that it's there and what's the timeline for approval. But I haven't heard Moderna. I think they're still in their studies. Yes, sir.
Have you heard anything about a booster shots?
So currently in the U.S., CDC, FDA, and HHS are saying they're reviewing the data. They don't feel that there's a booster needed at this time. Overseas, the story's a little different. Israel is the first country that has agreed with Pfizer to start a booster. So we'll see what our FDA and CDC come out with. So we're waiting on that. But currently, there's not one available.
Vinny, I know we're also suggesting that we begin, if you're not feeling good, get tested.
Yes.
Let's not just forget about the testing sites, and I know you've got those listed. When you're doing the tests now, we're hearing so much about this Delta variant. Are you testing specifically to see if it's the Delta strain, or how do we arrive at this statement that Delta is the one that's really spreading quickly?
So not every test is studied that way. CDC has some large-scale contracts with big companies. I forget the big LabCorp and CPL and all those larger companies. Quest, yes. And they get samples from all over the place. I mean, all over the country. And that's how we're deriving our data. And that's been part of the reason why some of the data has been not available locally on what's happening in your community, because they're looking at HHS regions and kind of extrapolating based on that. Not every test that is run locally is studied for a variant, but once you see that majority of the cases are coming out that way, it's fair to presume most of that is the Delta variant.
So you do not individually test?
No.
And could not say to someone, okay, you have the Delta variant?
No, sir. We send surveillance samples occasionally up to CDC, but it's rare. Yes, sir. On the testing, so I wanted to say there's a new guidance. So till last week, excuse me, when CDC revised their guidance about masking for vaccinated individuals, they also revised guidance about testing. Till then, if you were vaccinated and you were not symptomatic, you're considered immune, no need to worry about testing unless you develop symptoms. Now, if you're exposed, let's say a work-related exposure occurred or a family exposure occurred, you're vaccinated, symptoms or no symptoms, they're saying 3 to 5 days out, go get tested, because there's concern that you may have a mild case, you may be kind of asymptomatic, so they want to capture all of that data. So that's new guidance. For unvaccinated people, it was always after exposure, wait 5 days if you don't have symptoms, but if you have symptoms, let's get you tested. So I know that comes up, and I know your offices get those questions as well, so I wanted to make sure you all got that.
Back to the booster shot.
Yes, sir.
Scenario. I'm hearing more and more friends of mine in my age group saying that they are inclined to go and get a third shot, regardless of the recommendations out of the CDC. Would you comment on that, please?
So from our standpoint, it's not available. I mean, officially, nothing is available in the United States because FDA, CDC, HHS all said we're going to review the data, see what develops, and then come back with a recommendation. So as a public health department, we very strictly follow those. The rest of that is an individual's discussion with their private physician. Physicians are the healthcare provider, and a lot of times they have a lot of sway on what they're going to be able to do, regardless of recommendation. So it's an individual discussion. It can't be a policy discussion from our standpoint because we follow what the CDC says. But a person can choose to talk to their provider and see what they will do. Yes, sir.
I hear you.
Yes, sir. Quick update on our vaccine clinics. So yesterday was our launch of the back-to-school shot rush. So again, as a reminder, the big locations at Ridgemar Mall, but then we have a rotational schedule. Yesterday we were also open at the Resource Connection for back-to-school shots. All locations have COVID vaccine available, but the big focus is back to school because school is going to open here soon. So at Ridgemar, we did almost 730 some back-to-school doses and about 71 COVID doses, so almost 800 doses. And then other locations had a couple hundred other doses that happened. We still are doing pop-ups as they come through. We'll still have Fridays at the Sundance Square. That's been extended because that site's been doing pretty good.
On that, I talked with some of the folks from Sundance Square yesterday, and they expressed a desire to, I may have misunderstood. I understood them to say that they would like to see it opened until 8 because they felt like there was a lot of activity between that 6 and 8 hour. But I thought I also understood them to say they wanted to consider Saturday. So if you would please have someone from your organization get in touch with them and see if they were talking about just on Friday to get from 6 to 8, or if they also, and it may be that they have some specific activities that are going on there on Saturday that they would like to do that.
Yes, sir. We got the message from your office and already passed on to the team. We'll work that out.
Good.
Yes, sir. And then we have other pop-ups happening as well. I think there's going to be one at the Miller Avenue Clinic starting August 9th. And I might be forgetting one or two, but there's some rotational pop-ups that are COVID only. And then there are a lot of requests that come to us, and this next chart shows you our calendar as it books out. And again, this is just what we have currently. A lot of those come in a little bit later. So as you can see, we're staying pretty full. And it really depends. Some days you get 5, some days you get 50. We'll take it all. I mean, we're happy to go and do as many people are willing to come and get vaccinated.
So Vinny, before you go, a couple of questions off that. Mobile unit unavailable.
That's just our van had some air conditioning problem. That's not the team. That's just the actual big bus.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Also, just for the rest of the court members, last week we had a meeting regarding pop-up clinics. Vinny and his team were there. We had we had someone from Catholic Charities there, as well as some other, a couple of my community liaisons. The way we are kind of working it out of our office is, especially with like Catholic Charities, we've got someone who they're going to work through. All of my community liaisons are reaching out to the schools, the cities, the different organizations that they're responsible for, and are just saying to them, if you want to pop up, let us know. We'll pass you along. Here's who you talk with. Bill Hanna was in there to talk about how we can work with them on promoting it, as well as just kind of the step-by-step procedure to do that. I think that we would, if you've got community liaisons that you're going to put on that, then you might let Bill know, or we can get also with Catholic Charities. But there may be other organizations that we want to reach out to and start working toward helping public health be able to set up these sites. We've tried to, the back to school was a very, we're on top of that right now, so it was very difficult to have any real planning time on that. I think public health would like to have 2 weeks, if at all possible. But as Vinny just said, if you know something's going on, it may just be that we don't get to promote it near as well as what we would like. We've got Regina, we've got Bill, we've got Brian at Public Health, all looking for ways that we can assist. In the Catholic Church, in the parishes there, they have flock notes. Their priests have 2 or 3 different avenues or apps available that they use to promote it with their parishes. So I think it's time now for us to really help in that regards, to try to set up, whether it be by zip codes, whether it be by neighborhoods or whatever we may do. But that's kind of the role we're taking in our office, and each one of the community liaisons are working through Rachel in my office, and then Rachel is communicating with Catholic Charities. Now, by coincidence, the lady that is in charge of Catholic Charities in trying to do this is a young woman by the name of Casey Whitley, who I happen to know very well. She is my daughter-in-law and has worked a lot with that, but she is here, and she's going to be very important. She's kind of the liaison between the bishop's office, Catholic Charities, and the community on this deal. So I just pass that along for whatever it's worth. Again, if you could, on this pop-up clinic, if you could start showing us in the past, once you've had the clinic, give us an idea of how many shots were given, so that we have a feel for, and where we maybe can say to a group, if you give us 2 days notice, you're likely to give 10 vaccines. If you give us 2 weeks notice, you're likely to give 60 or 70 vaccines.
So it's going to be real hard to show that on the screen, but we do have a Care for Tent report that goes out, I think, every Monday morning to all of your offices. So the details are there. Work with Mr. Manius' office. Yes, and it when I send the report, it's 11 by 17, and it's got a lot of clinics. I mean, they need to pull out the magnifying glass. So it gets real crowded when it's going to be hard on the screen.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Okay. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Will you go back to the dashboard or the dashboard, I guess, that'll launch tomorrow, and explain again, for instance, the example you gave about the vaccination rate by race? Help me understand how to read that.
So this is now based on the denominator population in each race category, in each age group, male, female, or by ethnicity. So let me pick an easy example by ethnicity. Hispanic and Latino, how many in our community? Almost 30% of our community is considered Hispanic Latino. So if you take the raw number of that, that's the denominator. How many of those folks are vaccinated? What we can see from the data, 29.5%. So about 1/3 of the Hispanic or Latino community is vaccinated. And a lot of times people get confused. The ethnicity is the ethnicity. It's not the race. A lot of them identify themselves as white. So that data is sort of duplicated in the other chart by race. So I want to make sure that's clear. So same thing with the race chart. How many African Americans in Tarrant County? And if that's the denominator, then 27.8% are vaccinated. So 1/3.
Okay, very good. And I must have missed it in your explanation the first time about what the denominator was. Because I'm looking at some of those numbers, I was like, that's not reflective of our county, but now that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay.
But this helps more, where do we focus our efforts? Where do we need to beef up the numbers?
But again, that is, when you're looking at the 30%, that includes children who are not eligible to be vaccinated.
That is correct. Yes, sir.
And so again, I'm not sure that gives us a achievable target. Do we not have the numbers for the percentage?
I'll ask again. I think I'll ask again. There was some complication. I think it was by zip code. We didn't have the numbers available, but at a county level we might. So I'll ask with the team.
I mean, I would prefer to know what we can reachably get to. If if there's 30% of that 30% are children that are not eligible, then we're working under the wrong facts, I think.
Understood.
So I would like this to be changed to eligible individuals.
Well, I'll have the team look at the data and see what we can add that. This week's stuff is already scheduled, but we'll iterate it. Yes, sir. All right. Real quick. So I was at that last chart. Your Honor, you and I attended an event on Friday. Both of us kind of, didn't get our calendars correct, but it was a very, very important event. If you wanted to kind of share, since our mass vaccination clinic sort of ended, if you want to kind of talk about what you saw there.
Well, I actually did earlier, and I'll do it again. I mean, there were a lot of folks there. It was 35 different agencies. 188,000 vaccines were given in that period of time, and they started about January. So they went, I guess, right at just a little over 6 months. From that perspective, they did a great job. They did it, they had drive-throughs. They had you come in, about 140 different individuals a day. Some of them were there every day. They had numbers, I really meant to get the statistics because, as I said, they had one individual that gave over 2,300 vaccines. It was just a myriad of numbers. So it was a bean counter. I loved it. And it was really a great effort and a way to show that different agencies could collaborate together and put aside all, titles and ranks and everything else and just get the job done.
Yeah.
And they really did get the job done.
And I'll be honest, the way I see it is, as the public health department, all we had to do was stir the pot and the community came together. Yeah. They did a good job. So I wanted to thank them all publicly as well. All right. Thank you.
Okay, if we can now go to item number 2, under the administrator section, Mr. Schaffner is here to address that particular item.
Good morning, Judge and Commissioners.
Good morning, Russ.
We are seeking today for the Commissioners Court to receive and file the final report for the 87th regular legislative session. So we have supplied with the Commissioners Court with that final report where we tried to work through and show, based on the court's legislative statements, the various bills that were filed and approved or passed through the legislature, as well as some of the policy areas, new policies that Commissioners Court and various departments will have to adopt in order to be compliant with the new statutes, whether or not they're currently in effect or will go into effect on September 1 or within the future. And then we work through a number of bills that we believe impact various county departments and tried to identify stakeholders and give a brief synopsis. And then finally, at the very end, we provided a list of state-mandated property tax increases, bills that will require Commissioners Court to allocate and expend funds in order to be compliant with those new state laws. We did not yet include a dollar figure along with those because we don't yet know the full impact of these, but we are anticipating Commissioners Court to have to expend funds for these issues. So with that, I'm more than happy to take any questions. If not, we're seeking your ability to receive and file this report.
Move to receive and file.
The report.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Do you have a hard copy of that I could have?
Do we get to receive and file the special session?
Thank you.
It'll be much shorter.
They came, they went, they did nothing. Please
Call the
vote.
question.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Judge, and if I could just take a quick second to thank everybody for not only helping us to compile that report, it was really a cross-departmental and cross-county process, as well as during the legislative session. All the different departments were incredibly helpful. The staff in the administrator's office, including Jason Adams, who worked with me on this, so really do appreciate everyone's help for that. Thank you, sir.
Russell, we appreciate you too and the job that you did. I think there are many things that happen that you don't have any fingerprints on, but that you still were very critical in making it happen. That's probably all that we need to say.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Russ.
Ms. Tidwell.
We have one item we're asking the court to consider this morning, and that's to receive and file the auditor's review of the financial and system controls related to Justice of the Peace Precinct 4, and you have the response attached.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Elections, I don't see Hyder. Is he hiding from me? Nope.
Hyder had previously contacted us and said he was not going to be able to make it, but he has one of his staff people here.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Stacy Beheimer. I'm the Technology Resource Coordinator. Hyder's in Austin at a conference. So this morning I would like to ask you if you will certify the election results of the United States District 6 runoff election.
Move for approval to certify.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Ms. Glenn?
Move to receive and file the personnel agenda.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the personnel agenda. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you and good morning. We have 3 additional items for you. The next 2 are requests for waivers. The first one comes from JP7, Judge Sanders requesting a waiver of 240 vacation hours effective August 9th, the details of which are outlined in your court communique. We are estimating a net cost to the general fund of approximately $7,848 and some change. That does include fringe benefits.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The next waiver comes from purchasing. Ms. Lee is requesting that the court waive 320 vacation hours effective September 1. As explained in your court communique, she has a senior contracts administrator who is retiring at the end of this month. We are estimating a net cost to the general fund of almost $17,000, actually $16,788 and some change. That does include fringe benefits.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And our fourth and final item, we're asking the court to approve the detention officer referral and recruitment programs for the sheriff's office. Of course, this is the item that we held, the court held from last week. Ms. Ramnarine got into quite a bit of discussion about it, and so I won't get into all of those details. I will just highlight a couple of points for the court. This program, if approved, will be effective from August the 7th through December the 31st of 2023. Again, this is planned to assist with the hiring and retention of detention officers. Specifically, there will be a referral incentive of $200 payable to any employee who refers applicants to the sheriff's office for detention officer position according to the criteria, of course, that's set forth in the policy. In addition, there is a recruitment incentive, which is $1,500 payable in 2 parts of $750. These funds are the funding that will be available to fund these programs will be ARPA funding. We have been in discussions with the county auditor's office, payroll specifically, and IT, and they are preparing the system configurations necessary to implement this program if approved by the court.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. I have one question. On page 1, additional details, each employee may receive only one series of recruitment incentives as outlined. What does that mean?
Tell me which program you're referring to, Judge.
Additional details.
Yes.
Each employee may receive only one series of recruitment incentives. I didn't think we had more than one recruitment incentive.
Well, the recruitment incentive, remember, is the $1,500. Right. And so, again, that will be payable in 2 parts, okay. $750 and $750. If you look at your top bullet at the very top under eligibility requirements. So the first payment is made after someone accepts the position, passes the certification exam. And then the second will be, of course, once they pass their probationary period. So that would be the series for that one hire.
So what you're saying is they couldn't quit after they've done that and then come back in and do it all over again?
They couldn't quit.
each employee may
Yes.
receive only one series. I mean,
Mhm.
we've only got the one recruitment incentive. So
Mhm.
how would,
So
can
there's.
you give me an example of where someone might have tried to get to?
So I don't know that I don't know that I have an example for you. I think the intention is just to make clear that once again, the criteria in the policy is met, there'll be the two $750 payments for a total of $1,500, and that will be the only payment made for that hire. Now, obviously, there are additional criteria which explain that these incentives don't apply to individuals who are currently employed, who were previously employed. I don't really know that I have an example. Do you have one, Ange? Other than what we've discussed.
The example that you just gave is probably the primary example.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
Chris also has an introduction he'd like to make to the court after his presentation.
Thank you, Shike. Good morning, Your Honor and court members. We have one item for your consideration this morning. It's requested that the Commissioners Court approve an amendment to the soft code license and the professional services agreement and software maintenance agreement between Tarrant County and Tyler Technologies to implement soft code application is the Tyler civil process supporting the constables.
Move approval.
Move for approval. Second.
We have a motion, a second. I thought that this program we were talking about around $100,000. About $100,000 each?
No, we've never used, you and I have not had a discussion dealing for $100,000.
Okay. I'm going to vote for it, but I can't even begin to tell you how much I don't like dealing with Tyler. And if it just weren't for the fact that I'm not interested in beginning another development project, we wouldn't be doing, I certainly would not support doing this, because I have few people who have had positive reactions with regards to Tyler. So I don't like them, and we'll do everything I can to get them out. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, and I have the privilege to introduce Ms. Carolyn Bogan. She's a new director of what used to be the Customer Resource Center, which is now a service delivery. Ms. Bogan comes to us from the state of Kansas, where she was up to recently the Chief Operating Officer in the Information Technology Department, overseeing all of the service operations and service delivery.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome.
And for those who don't know, she is the replacement for Mr. Keith Hughes, who retired earlier this year.
Melissa?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Melissa.
We have 5 items for your consideration. The first item is an award recommendation for RFP number 2021-079. This is our annual contract for Enterprise Digital Media Evidence Player for the Criminal District Attorney's Office, awarding to Holbrook and Miller, doing business as TM Television, per contract terms.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The second item is an award recommendation regarding bid number 2021-119 for structured cabling system for the Juvenile Service Campus expansion project for information technology, awarding to Able Communications in the amount of $359,862. If approved, we're also requesting contract approval and acceptance of the payment and performance bonds.
Move approval.
Move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And the third item is also an award recommendation regarding RFP number 2021-123. This is an annual contract for COVID needs and resource assessment and related support for the County Administrator's Office, awarding to Innovative Emergency Management per contract terms. If approved, we're also requesting contract approval.
Move for approval.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The fourth item is an approval of termination of multiple contracts for RFP number 2016-207, RFP 2018-178, and RFP number 2019-206 with GXP Partners. This is for the Information Technology Department.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Let's have a little bit more. Why?
Okay. I have Russ here that can probably explain it better, but there were some, it's a termination for convenience due to not meeting schedules, and Russ wants to add more.
Your Honor, we decided to exercise the clause in our contract to terminate that engagement in order that we explore other avenues to accelerate our movement towards completion of some of those engagements that they were involved in to meet certain critical timelines. So we had a clause in our contract to be able to exercise that, and in one rare opportunity, we did decide to do that.
So when the projects they just weren't moving along at the time?
At the pace we would want them to.
That's correct. We had two projects that we were working on. One was in the ME's office. The other one was in the DRO office. It was the utilization and implementation of the Appian software or the toolbox, and we weren't moving quite as quickly as we needed to. So we exercised this, and we have now engaged another contractor to complete that work.
Okay.
Is it Tyler? I just thought I'd ask.
Is it Tyler?
No, sir.
It's not.
Thank you for asking. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And the last item is a request to rescind court order number 135784. This is our bid number 2021-108. This is our semi-annual contract for copy paper, envelopes, and related products, awarding to the primary and secondary vendors listed in your court communique. There was a vendor archive supply that was left off by mistake. The buyer thought that they did not sign their addendum, and when the award came out a couple of weeks ago, the archives reached back out to that buyer to let her know that it was in the envelope. So she looked through all the pages, and it was just in a different, it was in the back, in the very back.
So we basically rescinded it and awarded it to archives?
Yes. It will change the order of award. So now archive, on the original award, we had a different vendor listed under those 13 items as primary.
So there's going to, somewhere in here, there is we're rescinding the court order, giving it to the first and the second. So somewhere in here, there's something where we're now awarding it to archives.
Yes, we're asking to rescind and the re-award recommendation.
Okay. Okay, so the B is where you're awarding it to the new people.
Yes.
Move approval.
Second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson, I see you have an interlocal agreement today.
I have 2 interlocals, one with the city of River Oaks and one with the city of Westover Hills. Have these been approved by the DA's office?
Yes, they are, Commissioner.
Yes, they have.
Yet? I move approval of item 8N1, A, B, C, and D.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Are there any appointments today? There being none, then we will move on with approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Manius.
Your Honor, we have one additional item we'd like to very briefly talk to the court about. This is the ARPA Act. Is that going to be, Helen, are you going to lead that, or is Russell? Okay.
I thought we were going to give Russell a second chance to talk about the special session.
Or the second special session. That'll take place next week, maybe.
Good afternoon, Judge and Commissioners. So we wanted to bring forward to the court as a briefing item to get your direction regarding 2 sets of items. Helen, with Budget and Risk Management, received departmental requests for the FY22 budget. Staff has worked through all of these requests, both for positions and for capital requests, to find which of these requests have to deal with the working through the issues related to COVID-19 within our organization and within our community. We've all identified 80 positions and $37 million worth of capital requests that meet the FRF eligibility guidelines. And so, and Helen's here to work through any details regarding the specific requests. But specifically what we're wanting to get from Commissioners Court this afternoon is to make sure that you all are okay with having these positions not in the FY22 budget, but in the special purpose FRF budget, which is a grant-funded budget. Now, these items, specifically the positions, will come back to Commissioners Court for their specific approval according to our normal processes through putting on the HR agenda to where we will work through those particular issues. But that's what we're seeking today specifically, is just make sure that y'all are okay with the direction that we're going with these particular items. And then we are happy to work through any questions or any particular issues that the court would like to discuss. Helen,
are there any questions regarding these positions?
Yes, my only unreadiness regarding these positions is the 50 additional detention officers for the Sheriff's Department and the associated supervisory staff that go along with that number of detention officers. This is 50 new officers in addition to those that we have already granted to the Sheriff's Office, which remain unfilled to this day. I question the capacity of the Sheriff's Office to absorb this many new positions. And at any rate, if we are going to include this, I would like it to be with the caveat that they fill the positions that we've already authorized first before we start spending ARPA money on new positions for the SO.
The 57 positions are out there. I think everybody, to date, we received an email stating that there were approximately 100 positions that weren't filled in the sheriff's office, which included the 57 positions you're referencing. And yes, we would try to make sure that they filled the 57 positions first before they move to these positions. But again, this will not be presented to you for approval unless it goes through the HR process. So Ange will bring back, the HR department will bring these back when needed. This is the request to for your recommendation on how we move forward right now.
It's a reservation of funds.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's, go ahead.
Well, I believe it's my understanding that there are also recruiting additions of other employees who are just doing recruiting and reviewing the number, the applications that are coming through.
That is correct. There are positions that are just for the recruiting training facilities that they have at Resource Connection.
And there has been some issues on the applications. I don't know what percentage is being approved.
I do know that they're seeking every endeavor to try to fill the positions currently. The action y'all took last week for the confinement positions hopefully will be somewhat beneficial for recruiting and those detention officers. But yes, I will agree that they will fill the positions that are already approved by Commissioners Court. I'm really not sure where I'm going to go with this.
I would like to point out that my unreadiness did not refer to the recruiting positions, just the detention officer positions and the supervisory staff related thereto.
I have the same concerns, but I'll add in talking with Helen is her sharing that for these and other positions that are part of the being funded by the FRF dollars, that is going to have to meet, pretty stringent criteria, or at least be able to be backed up by certain measures of accountability set by the federal government. So, I think I'm fine with this moving forward as it's presented, but I will, have similar reservations as we move forward and wanting to make sure that these and any other position or any other cost associated with what staff has met with us about or met with me about, that we're doing so in accordance with the use of the funds.
Commissioner Allen is correct. There's going to be very stringent reporting requirements, which the departments will have to assist in compiling the data to submit so that we can meet the guidelines that are in the ARPA. So they will have to come back and show how these were effective. The departments have been talked to some extent about this. We're starting meetings to begin to talk to them about what's going to be required for them to add to the reporting. In addition to that, I want to say that annually, these positions will be reviewed by the same group that is currently has reviewed the positions to see if they meet the ARPA guidelines. And we'll look at this annually to see if they still meet the ARPA guidelines and move forward with the recommendation year after year until the exhaust in 2024.
Chief, do you wish to come forward and say anything?
Well, no, first of all, I know the court understands the critical need for staffing that we have, and that being adjusted with the salary structure last week, and the sheriff's office certainly presents that or appreciates that. We are still currently working the staff 6 days a week to have minimum staffing in place to meet jail standards. And what we're anticipating is that with the 57 positions, and then with the new positions in the budget that would be funded through ARPA, that if we were able to get those in place, then we could staff the jail appropriately, we could get our people off the 6-day work weeks. Now, attrition is killing us right now. We used to average 10 to 12 a month through attrition. 3 months ago, we had 17. Last month, we had 20. 2 months ago, we had 20. And last month, we had 21 leave. So attrition is, and that's the reason why we appreciate so much the action of the court going from a 51 to a 52 position and bringing people in at a hiring rate, and also the incentive programs for the $1,500 bonus split 2 different ways, and the hiring or the recruitment of the $200. So we understand that getting people hired is critical. We have just staffed, increase in staffing at the training center so we can run dual academies. We have one starting, I believe, this week, and then one starting on the 13th or the 14th. And we're going to continue to try to run dual academies, which hopefully will fill these open positions much quicker. That's kind of the current state of where we are right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So again, we're not actually filling the positions at this point. We're not even authorizing the positions. We're simply putting a kind of a tab in the ARPA funds for this particular amount.
That is correct. HR will bring the positions back to you for specific approval of each one of these. This is a concept that you're approving for us to move forward so that we can finalize the budget, the proposed 22 budget, and present to you next Monday.
And again, one of the things that you mentioned, and you mentioned it as departments, I think it's one thing that we need to be very clear with our department heads or supervisors, that when we add folks in some of the areas with ARPA, for the ARPA funds, they're going to have to basically check off that they understand that those individuals can only be used for ARPA-related activities without potentially endangering the ability for the county to use ARPA funds to pay for them.
Yes, sir.
And that's everybody in the room. If you're hiring somebody with quote-unquote ARPA-related funds.
And we should also be cognizant of the fact that these are permanent positions that will have a lifetime long after the ARPA funding has expired. And we're going to have to figure out a way to pick them up in our budget if, in fact, they are critical positions.
Well, I am hopeful that, what we have seen in our average daily jail pop is as a result of COVID, we have seen those numbers increase by 500, 600, 700 inmates. And so I guess if everything we're doing doesn't related to COVID, and if we can get through the pandemic, then these shouldn't be permanent employees. But I hear what you're saying.
So
once we add them, they have a hard time getting.
We need some clarification on that, because Helen, you want to talk about how we're classifying these employees?
They are grant-funded positions. The employee will sign a form saying that they understand when the end of the resources are available, the position does go away, just like any other grant that we have in the county. If an annual review shows that these positions need to be permanently placed there, then that's when we'll address whether they're still meeting the ARPA guidelines or need to go over to general fund.
Okay. And I would suppose that, again, at that point in time, they'll be, before we get to these 57, we will have filled the 100.
That's correct.
Maybe.
Yes. The intent would be that.
Yes. Before we get to the 57, we got to do the 100, and after the 57, then we might start nibbling on this 50.
That's correct. All right, thank you.
Yes. So there's a second page, that's positions. There's a second page that has capital items that are predominantly IT and facilities. And we're asking a recommendation to move forward with these programs so that we can complete our FY22 budget request.
I got no problems with those.
The only one that I have
Good
a
one, then.
problem with, and not anything toward the tax office, but the administration building, for the longest time, we carried $12 million that we were gonna renovate the, I think, the 4th and the 5th floors. I'm of the opinion that this building needs to be probably more than just renovated. We have a lot of folks that are all over the place. You know, it's certainly not something that I'm suggesting would go into the bond package this time, but I would certainly like for us to consider in the future a new administration building, which means we'd all have to get out of here for some period of time while this building was probably raised and built again, or something. That's my opinion, and my opinion won't matter in about 17 months. And I don't see this happening before 17 months, but I just am not real excited about spending $6 when I hope that we're going to tear it down and start over pretty quickly. Or hope y'all tear it down and start over pretty quickly. But that's just an opinion of one, and better hurry. That's the deal. I'm going to go ahead and support going forward with this in here, but I'm just saying, I hate to just throw away $6 million. Any other discussion or comments?
Yes,
Judge, I'd like to make a quick clarifying comment. So regarding the facilities list, there's all of the FY22 facilities specifically that total
50
on page 9, that total $37.5 million. Again, those are all the ones that we believe in the FY22 requests equal that. There are 2 other items that we have added to the list for you all to see that we would like to begin including for long-term planning issues as we are working through the ARPA funds. First is the Tim Curry Criminal Justice Center, the elevators, to where that would also be included, because that's something that we know that we believe that is likely ARPA eligible, and also that we know that we need to do. In 2, third floor of the Plaza building, there's 9,000 square feet that is unfinished, that we believe we will have a space need for that in the future, in the very, very near future. So we wanted to also include those 2 as well. So we're wanting to make sure those 2 items are also included as we're looking for long-term planning in this.
That reminds me of one of the other things that I'd ask of that money. I know that these capital projects, we have to, the auditor has to certify that we got all the funds there. How much of this do you actually see hitting the 22 budget as far as actually being spent or used in 22?
We're not able to put that all together for today, but we will get with facilities and determine what they believe will be able to do in the first year and present that back to y'all. And then everything after that will be a multi-year.
Okay. Any other questions?
We don't need any action on this.
Just a verification that the mental health jail diversion program is on this list somewhere?
Sir, Commissioners Court last week took specific action regarding the mental health diversion center.
Right.
And so staff has everything that we need in order to be fully
I just need
processed
it
and out.
included in the total.
It's there.
Mr. Shaw.
It's there.
Yes, sir, it is.
So we don't need any formal action by the court, but what we do need is just a consensus that we are going to move forward with these recommendations as we move into Monday and the FY22 budget hearings.
Go for it.
What he said.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson.
I do want to just go back a little bit to what he just asked about as far as the jail diversion center. Are we talking? Wouldn't we be talking about possibly spending that money this year?
Yes.
Well, that's what I was thinking. So
yes, but we took some court action last week already
Right.
on the acquisition of facilities as relates to that item.
Okay. All right.
That's all we have at this time, Your Honor.
Okay. At this time, we will recess our open meeting, proceed to close to discuss items exempt under Section 551 .071, 072, 074, 076, and 087 of the Texas Government Code. Blink if you're on. Having returned from our closed session, there being no business to conduct at this time, we are adjourned. They weren't going to come in, so.